Welcome to the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. My name is Kimberly Jackson, and I'm the Executive Director. And today we are so honored to have a group of outstanding leaders in our community who are committed to volunteering, they're committed to leading volunteers and sharing their expertise on how they have navigated assisting our volunteers do a better job in our community amid COVID. We wanted to really talk about this specific area because volunteering is an operation and includes how we deal with impacts and how we do recruitment. We want to gain a significant understanding of what it's like to educate our community leaders on how we pivot, particularly in this hybrid space where employees are changing rapidly. So this is an opportunity for us to grow in this space. And before we get started, I wanted to recognize today's lead partner, which is the Florida Civic Advance. This is a part of their new First Friday series, and we wanted you to learn a little bit about what the Florida Civic Advance does. The Florida Civic Advance, as you can see through this video, is an organization dedicated to educating the community. The membership nonprofit statewide organization, and like us, they're a convener and connector. They have interest in making sure that there is civic conversations on a plethora of issues that help move the needle for our community. And for more information on them, about their benefits and application, you can go to the new website at www.floridacivicadvance.net. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panel and moderator. So our first person that we're going to, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, as you were thinking about the questions during the conversations, please put them in our Q&A. And if you have any thoughts you'd like to share, please put them in the chat. So the first panelist I'd like to introduce is Jennifer Silva. Jennifer is a Florida native and graduate of the University of South Florida with 25 years of experience in the Tampa Bay area for not-for-profit sector. She works with volunteers and has been a common favorite thread throughout her career, eventually leading Jennifer to the St. Pete Free Clinic in 2019. She is the Director of Volunteer Services and manages a robust volunteer program and oversees a roster of 450 active volunteers who support SPFC's mission to provide healthcare, nutrition, food, recovery, housing, and education for our neighbors in need across Pinellas. And our next lead is Xavier Oliver, who I just met and been quite impressed with. He serves as the volunteer program manager for Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas and West Pasco counties. And in his role, he works with volunteers and community members to break the cycle of generational poverty, which is what SPC is also committed to, and to create intergenerational wealth through affordable home ownership. He specializes in volunteer experience and retention and supports his mission, and is a graduate of University of Tampa with a bachelor's degree in marketing and an MBA. And finally, Michelle Curtis, as our panelist, is a well-known entity in her community. She is the Chief Development Officer and Vice President of Philanthropy at the YMCA of Greater St. Petersburg, and utilizes her many years of both career and volunteer experience in fundraising, which we appreciate in our community. Michelle provides strategic leadership and financial development to advance the YMCA's mission through annual giving, major gifts, planned giving, and capital campaigns. And she's a longtime resident. She attended University of Florida with a BS in public relations. She also holds degrees from St. Petersburg College with an associate's degree in business administration. So we have to get through this long list, and before we get into this heavy conversation about what it means really to volunteer. I'm honored also to share this space with our co-moderator for today, which is Dave Monroe. And I'm just very grateful. St. Petersburg College has a lot of inherent talent that we don't tap into all the time. And Dave is one of those persons that we rely on. Dave Monroe is a professor of applied ethics at St. Petersburg College. He received his bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of West Florida and master's degree in philosophy from Western Michigan University. He also did graduate work at Michigan State University and is currently working on his PhD in continental European philosophy at Strafford Child University in England. Again, I said quite impressive.
Mhm.
Professor Monroe's area of focus, specialization throughout is in meta-ethics and normative moral theory. The former is a theory of moral language and metaphysics, and the latter attempts to spell out how we should conduct ourselves. His research focuses on the moral philosophy of Michael Sears. And I think I said that right. We talked about this. I want to make sure I pronounced the person you look up to in research notes. And so before we turn it over to Dave, I want to make sure also that you, again, remind you that you put your questions in the Q&A and your comments in the chat. And thank you for sharing this lunch hour with us. Dave?
Thank you, Kim, for those excellent introductions. Generous and kind as always. I have to say, I feel some personal pride at having some connection to the educational institutions that you mentioned that our folks have been to, having taught at University of Tampa and teaching here at SPC. So nice to see our alumni out doing great things. We'll start with a sort of general question, and I think I'd like to address it to Jennifer to start. I think maybe because your specific area of volunteering has been probably most directly impacted by the pandemic. But how has the landscape changed for volunteers over the past few years during COVID?
Well, it's been a significant change here at the St. Pete Free Clinic in that our operations had to change quite a bit to accommodate a demand for our services, specifically in our food programs area. The Free Clinic has a variety of programs, but we focus on food, shelter, and healthcare, if you will. And in the area of food, we knew the demand was going to increase quite a bit, and the model that we had pre-COVID certainly wasn't going to support that increase in demand. So the way our volunteers were able to contribute, the amount of time that we needed, the type of volunteers that we were interested in bringing into our programs at the time, everything was kind of new and fresh, if you will. In the early days, we considered perhaps not engaging volunteers at all and using our staff to come fill in and figure out a way to make that happen. And luckily, we had some incredible leadership on our executive leadership team that were very helpful. We met on a daily basis in the early COVID period and found that we had a volunteer force comprised of a lot of folks who were over 65. It was very a high risk scenario, and we wanted to make sure that we kept those folks safe, but decided to keep the volunteer program going. And we moved from an indoor environment to an outdoor drive-through for our food pantry, and obviously kept a close eye on all the safety protocols, making sure that we kept our volunteers and clients and staff members safe, but we're able to meet the huge increase in demand for food. At our health center and our residential programs, we had to look a little bit differently. Our health center closed in many ways and did telehealth only, so we didn't allow volunteers into that environment for a period of time. And at our residential programs, especially because a communal living environment can be particularly challenging during a pandemic. So we really focused our efforts in one facet, which met the greatest amount of need in those early days. And so our individual volunteers were able to get plugged in, and those who were 65 or over, we asked to stay safe at home for a while until we felt comfortable inviting everybody back. So that's the quick snapshot of how things looked pre-COVID versus after, the early days, and how we're still kind of operating now.
Michelle, would you like to address that question? How has the landscape changed for volunteers over the past few years at YMCA?
Well, unlike not dissimilar to Jennifer, we've had a similar experience. The YMCA is a very social entity. A lot of the services and the programs that we provide are face to face. We've been around a very long time, and what some of you may not know is that in addition to the obvious things that we do with our facilities, we run many programs in conjunction with our partnership with Pinellas County Schools. And so we have literally thousands of children that come into our before and after school program and into our care. Our Y Reads program is quite extensive. And in fact, our Y Reads program really relies heavily on participation of volunteers in order to run. And so COVID really presented a very significant challenge to us because, as you all know, by executive order of the governor, we were closed for several months and the schools were closed. And so the programs that we run in partnership with Pinellas County Schools stopped operating in the facilities. And we actually, I'm going to use that pivot word, but we actually pivoted to start engaging with the students virtually because, as you all can just imagine, a lack of instruction, particularly in a reading remediation program, is devastating to a child's progress. And so we were very focused on making sure that we had a plan moving forward for that. When the facilities reopened, approximately 60 days later, or almost 90 days later, we did not engage any volunteers. Normally, our YMCA has about 700 volunteers engaged in various programs that we run during the year. We have a very large Christmas program that we run, Y Reads. We have lots of volunteer coaches for youth sports. And so we went from basically 700 people engaging with us in a volunteer capacity to 0. And it stayed at that level for a good number of months because, we were, quite frankly, really trying to navigate just the keeping our staff safe. We were operating at 25% capacity because we were limiting the number of people that were, kind of moving around in our facilities. And so, we've not even yet returned to pre-COVID levels of volunteerism. And like, Dave said, we're going to address some of that organically in the conversation, but we're still, be below, where we were. We are back in the classrooms, but that's been challenging because, people are in different spaces with regards to how they personally feel about COVID. And so while for a long time, we continue to encourage mask wearing in our facilities, it's not a requirement. We, for a long time, had limited access to our facilities to encourage social distancing. But keeping in mind that we do run some of our programs in coordination with Pinellas County Schools, and we're in their facilities, we have to navigate the requirements that they have as well. And so, we've tried to do that in a way that protects our staff, our students, the program participants, and our volunteers.
Yes, you are already anticipating and organically answering some of the questions. But before we move on to those, Xavier, do you want to address the question about how volunteering has changed at Habitat for Humanity?
Of course. Very similar to Jennifer and Michelle, we experienced a lot of change and had to be very flexible during the pandemic. In our last fiscal year before the pandemic began, from July 2018 to June 2019, we had completed almost 90,000 volunteer hours. Just over 88,000 to be exact. So to go from that and have them heavily involved in all of our operations, from build sites to restores to here in our office, special events, it's like losing half the team. So when you go from that amount of volunteer work to absolutely nothing, it was very difficult to deal with. But luckily, for about 16 months, our community really wrapped their arms around us, and they lifted us up and they helped us with funding and they helped us with volunteer resources. Really just took us and helped us get through the pandemic. And as those 16 months came to an end, we restarted our volunteer opportunities in person July 1st of 2021. And since then, from July 1st, 2021 to the end of 2021, we've had just over 50,000 volunteer hours. So obviously it's building back up, but we're trying to do so in a safe manner and do it as best we can.
So it sounds like all of you have experienced that the pandemic had a kind of chilling effect on volunteerism at the beginning, but it sounds like there's a bit of an upturn that's happened in recent days. Although ironically, the pandemic is at its worst now. Has that really been a factor? Have you guys seen this recent Omicron surge? Is it renewing the chilling effect, or if people now just sort of realize that their volunteerism is important and really want to participate regardless of the surges?
I think our volunteers are very aware of all that's going on. I have a very open door policy with our volunteers. And our CEO has also expressed that she has a very open door policy. We meet weekly and talk about what's happening and try to communicate very openly with our volunteers what our procedures are. And we tend to go to the strictest possible safety protocols. We do still require masks for all volunteers in indoor spaces. We have our food pantry is an outdoor space. So we lifted the mask mandate outdoors not too long before the Omicron thing became an issue. I mean, we have not added back a mandate for outdoor mask wearing, but I worked last night in our food pantry drive-through with our volunteers, and every single one of them still had a mask on. So we strongly encourage it. But our volunteers are very aware that we are still in the middle of the pandemic. We are not out of the woods, but like you said, are so committed to wanting to help. And the need is so obviously there that we still have more volunteers interested than we have opportunities to put them into.
What, Michelle or Xavier, want to follow up on that with anything, or?
Well, I would say that we still are feeling the chill of the pandemic, and to Jennifer's point, it's not over. And we also recognize that. I think that, for us, we classify volunteers are very important to us in all across our mission. We classify, our boards we consider to be our best volunteers. And from my perspective, I place a high value on volunteerism in our organization, because those people they become your advocates, your ambassadors, your donors, right? And so, the relationships that we have with these folks are extremely important to the mission, to advancing the mission of the organization. And I say that because, we've really been challenged with that throughout COVID, because again, we want to be respectful of everybody that we engage with, and not only have protocols in place to protect them, but also place a value on their perspectives. You know what I'm saying? And so it's a challenging environment, for an organization. And we've not risen back to the levels pre-COVID. We're sitting right now probably at about 250, about a third of our normal number of volunteers engaged in our programs. And I think that some of the engagement really does come from opportunities where they're not putting themselves in a closed environment. So they're outside, or, to Jennifer's point, we've kind of shifted some of our opportunities from being like all together inside to having an outside environment where people feel safer. They feel like they can, distance themselves. They can put a mask on if they want, you know what I'm saying? So I think that we've done similar things to try to mitigate, that circumstance, and to encourage people to re-engage with us again, because we definitely want them to be, we need them to be. And so, that's where we are with it.
Yeah, and just to jump off of that, it is a very challenging environment to bring back our volunteers. We're hoping to continually grow our volunteer opportunities and to build back those numbers that we had pre-pandemic. But similar to Jennifer and Michelle, we're doing everything we can on all of our build sites and restores to help our volunteers feel safe. Our staff is 100% vaccinated. That's something that we're proud of, to invite people into our space, knowing that we've done everything on our part. On our build sites, we do encourage masks. We try to work with each other from a distance. Then obviously during those homes that are pretty much complete, we keep all the doors and windows open to keep that fresh air circulating. So we try to do everything we can to bring people back as they're comfortable and in a safe manner.
If you'll permit me to summarize a bit, it seems like the real challenge, if I can put a bow on it, is that you all work in areas that serve really precarious and underserved people.
Yes.
And without your volunteers, it seems like you all are in a precarious and underserved position, which makes it especially challenging, right? So we've spoken a little bit about how much you rely on volunteers, but maybe as a sort of reflection, we can talk a little bit about how volunteering is good for your volunteers themselves. So we know that they're essential to a variety of community needs, and we see that now more than ever. But we also know that it's gonna benefit the volunteer in some ways. So how do you see strong volunteer initiatives affecting the larger community beyond the services volunteers provide, and how do you see it benefiting the volunteers themselves? And maybe that's a springboard to getting more people to volunteer with your organization. So maybe anyone, feel free to open up with thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in to start. So our volunteer opportunities are very long-lasting and tangible. When you're building the home for a family in our community and you're putting up those windows and doors, every time you drive by the house for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to see those same doors and windows that you put up. So obviously, every time that you walk away, you're making a tangible impact. So obviously, for our volunteers, that's a great way for them to see their work, standing, and the work that they've done is truly tangible. In terms of the overall community of volunteerism and how it affects the community at large, it truly affects the overall health and capability of the community. And I think if we're able to instill a culture of volunteerism in the youth at a young age, then they'll have that sense of purpose and drive to continue to be contributing members of the community. And then together, that will alleviate a lot of the everyday struggles that we're going through, especially in times of need like now, as we're experiencing during the pandemic. But it'll truly lift up everybody in the community, have roofs over our heads, food on the table, and so on and so forth.
I'll go. I'm in the middle spot, I think. So I think that for us, since so many of our volunteer opportunities really serve the youth development component of our organization, we hear all the time from volunteers about how enriching, their engagement with our programming is. And honestly, we during the worst of the pandemic, when things were really shut down and we really couldn't figure out a way that we could re-engage our volunteers in a safe manner. And back to somebody's point, somebody made the point that a lot of their volunteers were older. Well, a lot of our volunteers are older too in that environment. I mean, we have a lot of retired teachers and people that, really want to give back, have some time to give back and really want to engage on a regular basis with a certain population. And it was really challenging for us to really try to re-engage those people in a safe way. But we hear all the time, from our volunteers that they feel not just that they're giving to the Y, but they're giving to the community by engaging in these programs that are making people better, that are helping families, advance, come out of the cycle of poverty, in our community. And so we are really cognizant of that. And we are constantly having conversations with our volunteers about, how do we make that better, for them? How do we make that a more enriching opportunity? And how do we recruit, more volunteers that are seeking to serve? So, yeah.
Well, here at the St. Pete Free Clinic, one of my favorite things to talk to new potential volunteers about is, the instant gratification that our volunteers get during their experience. I know you get instant gratification building a house and working with youth as well. And it's important. You are there, you're hands-on, you get an instant feeling of the good that you're doing, and you can see it. It's tangible. And I think that's important. In the early days of the pandemic, a lot of the volunteers, we weren't sure if people were going to be interested in coming out to volunteer at that point. We had no idea what to expect. And the interest was overwhelming. Now, the free clinic was lucky because we got some media attention because of the food lines, people waiting for our food pantry, and that got a lot of people interested. But what I recall hearing most were two things. Number one, I feel like I have to do something to help. I feel helpless right now. I need to be able to be part of the solution. And so luckily we were in a position to give volunteers that chance, but also people felt isolated. And we were one of the few places where, even though they were masked and gloved and sometimes in multiple masks, they were able to interact with other human beings, both from their volunteers to our staff to our clients. And that was very fulfilling. from a community standpoint, I think that volunteerism gives everyone in our community a chance to participate and collaborate. It promotes this feeling of civic duty and brings us together. And, we have people of all ages and backgrounds in our volunteer program. And we like to give everyone a chance to say, hey, we're part of the solution. We are all neighbors, maybe neighbors with differing needs, but we're all part of this community together. And I think that volunteerism is the way that we promote that feeling in a community, especially during a time where we're so divided, that we can have common goals to help people who are in need build houses and provide youth development through the YMCA programs. I mean, it's serving so many purposes, and it's really a bright light during a time that I think has been particularly challenging for everybody. And even in our beautiful city of St. Petersburg, we're all coming together now, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's a really excellent point, I think, that you've all made about the relationship with the community, and you used the word developing a culture of volunteerism. Moral psychologists point to a decrease in empathy with an increase of remote interactions with people. And the fact that volunteering is available as an opportunity to ameliorate some of that, I think is a great community benefit. And I'm glad you guys highlighted that. So maybe thinking creatively in post-pandemic times, what maybe other suggestions you'd have about how we can help develop or encourage this culture of volunteerism in our community?
This is very helpful. Really allowing nonprofit organizations to share, sort of lift the hood a little bit, right? And take a look underneath to see really what's going on and talk about those things. I mean, and it's not all pretty for us. We love our volunteers. We have wonderful relationships with our volunteers. And, I really think that COVID has caused us all to behave a little bit differently and think a little bit differently about our persons, like where we put ourselves and how we're engaging with other people. And as you all know, by virtue of what I do for the Y, face-to-face interaction for me is a vital component to advancing fundraising, and developing resources for the Y. And we've had to change the way we do that a little bit, because not everyone on the other end is comfortable with that environment anymore. And I think we really need to start taking a look at how we are providing opportunities to people. And is there a way, that we can meet people where they are, right? I mean, we talk about that in fundraising all the time, meeting people where they are. I think volunteerism, it kind of runs hand in hand, and we really need to start thinking about meeting volunteers where they are, and kind of maybe doing a little bit of broader thinking about opportunities that we're giving people to engage. Yeah.
I mean, I had literally in my notes, meeting people where they are is a huge part of it. Part of what I've been really focused on now is working with my colleagues to let volunteers and prospective volunteers know that you're not just filling the role that a staff person might do, and you're not just saving us money by giving your time. Volunteers enhance our ability to accomplish our mission. They bring things to the table that a staff alone can't do. So imagine, we have about 35,000 volunteer hours contributed to our organization last year. It equates to about 18 full-time employees, but there's no way that 18 individual people could contribute the depth and breadth of experience and skills to the table that our volunteer force does. So reminding volunteers that you're not just saving us money and doing a job, you're enhancing our programs and ultimately better serving our clients. And meeting people where they are, I think, is thinking out of the box. Like Michelle said, I mean, I'm sure everybody has had opportunities to think about virtual volunteer opportunities and how we can really, engage our volunteers in a virtual space. And looking at nights and weekends now that people are, back to work, can we provide opportunities for people who are full-time workers? Things like that, I think, need to be part of the ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Meeting people where they are is essential. We're trying to provide new ways for volunteers to get involved, and providing opportunities for individuals that may not feel comfortable getting out on a build site or being indoors with our office staff. So just giving people the opportunity to feel comfortable and still make an impact on the community is huge. One way that we did that during the pandemic, our homeowner services team did an excellent job of transitioning all of our homeowner education classes from in-person to Zoom. So despite them not being able to go out to the build site and swing a hammer and learn about home maintenance and home construction, they were still able to get that education through online opportunities. And I think as much as the face-to-face interaction is essential and probably the more beneficial method, I think the online opportunities are something that should continue as people are transitioning back into the normal way of volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys have, excuse me, sort of alluded to some of this in my next question, but I'm interested to see kind of what you guys make of. I think one of the challenges with volunteers that you don't have with sort of normal employees is that there's looser sets of responsibilities that come along with being a volunteer, right? The commitment maybe not quite as binding as if you're getting a paycheck, I guess is what I'm driving at. So it seems to me that there might be some unique challenges to how one recruits, retains, and engages volunteer workforce over time. Can you maybe speak to best practices for managing volunteers for folks who may be interested in getting involved in nonprofit in the post-COVID world, or maybe starting up an organization of their own? What are some of your best practices for managing and working with volunteers?
I'll jump in to start here. In terms of recruitment, we try to tap into a variety of audiences. So that's everything from high school students to corporate teams, churches and faith groups. We've had a couple of USF teams. We had the football team, men's and women's basketball teams. So there are plenty of audiences in the community that organizations can tap into, and you just have to kind of be creative to see who's available and who's willing to help out with the mission. In terms of retaining, it just really comes down to offering the best possible experience. And our team does an excellent job of that. I would specifically like to highlight our site supervisor team. So when you're out on a build site, they're going to make sure that you are comfortable completing the tasks that you're doing. For example, our volunteers will help us install cabinets, doors, and windows. The average person probably doesn't even know where to start, and it can result in a very poorly built house, but they're with you every step of the way. They're answering questions, they're training you, teaching you how to do it efficiently. So the next time that they come back, they've not only given back to the family, but they walk away with those skills. So just giving the best possible experience and helping them meet their needs, as well as providing that service and work to us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess I'll jump in here and say that, ditto, we are also seeking to provide our volunteers the best possible experience when they engage with us. I would say that we have a pretty rigorous requirement that our volunteers go through background checks. We're dealing with children on a regular basis. And so we have a pretty rigorous process for them. And I would say that with some of our programming, like for our youth sports, we have coaches and people that are engaged with kids all the time. And, it's almost like a job interview, when you're going through that process here at the Y. I would say that for our Y Reads program in particular, which is a program that's been around 17 years and is a remedial reading program for youth. The program has expanded now to include youth from ages from first grade all the way through high school. Our volunteers are trained. They complete training, they have regular training. And in order to volunteer for that program, you have to make a time commitment. Like we ask for a specific commitment. So it really is almost like a paid position. And the program honestly could not run without that component. It is a key part of our program. And so I think we have honest conversations with volunteer candidates about commitment. And we do talk about the rewards of that commitment. And we find that the people that do come into that do come in, to us that way, we don't have to work very hard, at keeping them engaged, because I think the front end of the process is the communication is appropriate. And so we're ending up with a product that is really right, for us and I think setting the expectations for that and being open about, what we really need as an organization. I think that marriages, the right people to us. And I think we've had great success with that.
Well, and absolutely. I mean, building on what Xavier said, giving the best possible experience for our volunteers who are in the field and out there working. And as Michelle pointed out, the onboarding process and the information that we put out in the community about what we're looking for. I think at the free clinic, I get the benefit of a very amazing director of communications, Cheryl, who gets information out into our community via our social media. Make sure that we have a presence in the community so people know about us. And that has made all the difference to recruiting new volunteers. But also, I like to point out that, I have a background in fundraising. I've done that most of my career, and volunteers are donors. And if you treat volunteers like donors, the process is the same. You cultivate the relationship, you're
Yes.
mindful, you understand that volunteers need a return on investment and that it's not the same for each individual volunteer. So you have to take the time to get to know your audience, if you will. And that's a big part of what we do. I am a part of a robust fundraising team at the free clinic, so I benefit from all of their expertise. But one thing I've noticed in particular as I've been in this position is our volunteers love to be informed and included. Our CEO, Jen Yeagley, has made a point to do virtual CEO connection events where we invite volunteers to come and chat with the CEO for an hour on Zoom and ask any questions they want. And I also try to do weekly and monthly communications with volunteers throughout our programs and update them on what we're doing. At the free clinic, we're growing very quickly. We have a lot of programs, a lot of things are changing. And volunteers like stats. I'll give you an example. In our one of our food packing programs, our volunteers were packing non-perishable food items into cardboard boxes. Well, the size of the box that we used changed. We just introduced a new size of box, and I heard so much. I got emails and text messages from volunteers for 3 days. Why did you change the box size? And I made a mistake. I should have gotten in front of that and let our volunteers know here are the reasons why. Not to fret, we have plenty of food, but our volunteers like to be informed. So in that way, they're like staff members. We try to keep them, we're building a volunteer advisory committee, so they get to be, nothing about them without them. We try to keep them involved in the conversation, share information with them. And again, our executive leadership has open door policies, which make that so easy.
I like that expression. I think I'll pirate it if you don't mind. Nothing about them without them. I think that's
Love it.
That's from our
really
CEO,
good.
Jennifer Yeagley. I stole that from her,
Yeah.
so I can't take credit, but yeah, she uses that approach in all things, including our clients, our staff, and our volunteer force.
That's a great communicative, inclusive principle. Well, thank you guys for all sharing those insights on those questions that we have. Professor Jackson, I believe that is the set of questions that we've got. And so now it seems like it's time to turn the program over to you and to take questions from the audience.
Yes, and so first of all, thank you all. Although I know you all and I know a lot about Habitat for Humanity, I learned so much. And Jennifer, I'm going to steal something from you that I also happen to know is Michelle's philosophy, which is that donors need a return on their investment. And then that is what volunteers are, that they are stakeholders. And I say that to people all the time. People don't give up this level of time without wanting something. From the basic of just feeling good to really committed to a cause, an issue, a program. And because of that, they're not doing it blindly, right? They're doing it because they care. So thank you so much for that. We do have a couple of questions for the audience, and I wanted to get to a couple I had if I have time. But one of them was a great question about civic engagement. I know your organizations do so much hands-on delivery services, either for families with affordable housing or for the whole lifestyle of a family with the St. Pete Free Clinic, or particularly with education and children and youth and families with the YMCA. But do you have any specific civic engagement outreach volunteer opportunities for your youth? And if you can share a little bit about how you've had to handle youth engagement since COVID, if you've had to at all.
So the
Well,
why, you wanted me to go, well, I'm just going to say the YMCA, we have a youth and government program that's run for a very long time. That we basically engages middle and high school students in a legislative process. They have their own sort of government. They elect their own governor. They go into a mock legislative session up in Tallahassee every year. This program's run for a very long time here at our YMCA, over 50 years, I believe. And there's always opportunities for people who want to engage in that space as a volunteer to engage in that space. With regards to youth volunteerism, we don't really have that much of a program that engages young people. I mean, now I say young people, I mean under the age of 18. Mm-hmm. We are always engaged with young professional groups and young members that are in our programs. And we have people volunteer that have been through some of our programs that are in the younger age group. And I think that's been a little more challenging too with COVID. I'm just going to say that because anything that might have been on the radar prior to COVID really is off the radar right now, just because we're so focused on just kind of hanging on to what we have and trying to get those wheels turning again. So, yeah, I hope that was a good answer. I mean, I hope that's the direction you really wanted me to go in.
Absolutely, because I will say that I am constantly contacted from people in the community, in part because some families just want their children to do their Bright Future hours, to be quite candid, in part because they want them to learn some service learning because they can't get them to do work, or they're trying to get them to increase their work ethic. And sometimes they just want to let them learn, like I did, as some of you all know, that there are people who always have more challenges that you do, and you're just trying to share life lessons. And so absolutely, we want to talk about, I think that at least the person who's asking this question is getting at how do we engage youth, and through your models with civic engagement, how do you tie these services? Jennifer, did you have anything to add to what Michelle said?
Yes, just very quickly. I mean, I think it's a real challenge. As you pointed out, there are lots of youth who need to get those Bright Futures hours in. COVID has made that very difficult for them. We got creative at the Free Clinic and created some do-it-yourself projects where youth could do their own food drives or hygiene drives to create mobile meal and hygiene kits that we distribute out through our food pantry to people who maybe are in transition or experiencing homelessness. This requires a lot of management and maturity on the side of the youth, but I have had great success with it. They track their hours, they do all the things they need to do, and they're creating at the end of the day a product that we can then give to our clients that provide immediate help. And yesterday I spoke to a young man who did one of these do-it-yourself projects and raised the money to buy all the items by hitting up everyone in his family on Facebook. And I thought, there we go, future fundraiser. This is awesome. He's got skills. His mom said he wasn't afraid at all. He felt really good about the cause. He knew it was, a great thing that they were donating to. So I think we have to get creative. And I think we have an obligation to the youth in our community to give them valuable, impactful opportunities to participate, not just to fulfill those hours that they need for Bright Futures, but also to do all the things we talked about earlier and to set the stage for their future civic engagement. And build a community that's inclusive.
Thank you so much. Xavier, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just real quick, as I said before, we have volunteers from all walks of life that are on our build sites and our resource and helping us out in different ways. And a good portion of that are our youth volunteers. So we do offer Bright Futures and community service scholarship hours to students. The minimum age is going to be 14 to volunteer with us. And there are some age restrictions based on the tasks that they can complete. But we do offer those, and a lot of students come in from colleges and high schools around the area to volunteer with us. And one initiative that was launched a few years ago and was adopted from Habitat International is the Campus Chapter program. So we have local high schools that create a group or club in their high school, and it's dedicated solely to Habitat. So they'll donate a portion of money that they raise throughout the year to Habitat. They'll participate in 10 or 15 events with us. So it offers benefits on both sides, and also gives youth an opportunity to participate in leadership roles within that group, and then just communicate with us on a professional level to give them some more experience as they move into different chapters in their lives.
Thank you so much. I have some more questions which are really interesting. One is about keeping the volunteers connected to each other during shutdown periods of the pandemic. And I think it was Jennifer that you said about isolation, which is real. If you have a lot of people, I had a lot of people who were older who are used to volunteering as a part of their socialization. Really, they're giving back, but it was also a meetup place for them. And so I know that speaks to mental health too, but this person asked, how did you keep your volunteers connected during the shutdown? And as a follow-up, to what extent do you see volunteers themselves as a community of friends? Which I think is really important, because when people do that, just like they have, I don't know, bowling leagues or movie night or book clubs, some people engage in this way, in this space. If any of you all could speak to that.
Sure.
Well, I'll just jump in. Oops, sorry. You go ahead, Xavier.
Thanks, Jennifer. Specifically talking about keeping our volunteers engaged, I think Michelle touched on this before, Jennifer possibly. Just keeping them informed. During the pandemic, we obviously had to adapt a lot of the ways that we were building homes and serving families in our community, but we were still able to serve 65 families in 2021. So that's 65 new homes, and 65 families received the keys and they moved into new homes. They took that leap into homeownership. So just keeping them informed about all the great work that we're doing, and we're looking forward to having them back on site and with us on our team. So just keeping them informed throughout that process. And in terms of volunteers being friends and kind of having that group camaraderie, we have a group of Weekday Warriors that we call our dedicated volunteers. So they'll come out once or twice a week, some on a monthly basis, but they're regulars with us. And when we see them on site, we know that our day is going to go by like a breeze. And a lot of them are connected with each other. They've been working together with Habitat and with each other for years and years. So it's a great group of gentlemen and women that really make a difference in our organization. So I think we present that opportunity to bring them together and also make an impact.
Jennifer, you were going to speak too.
Well, I think the free clinic was lucky in that we were able to invite in-person volunteers to work in the outdoor drive-through fresh pantry. So we did give them, some volunteers, an opportunity to have interaction with other humans in real life. But I will say that our volunteers have expressed over and over again how important the social aspect is to them. And so we're looking at, organizing volunteer socials once it's safe for us to meet in person, which serve no purpose other than for our volunteers from all programs to get together and to meet each other in all different kinds of ways. We tried to do some of that via Zoom during the pandemic, during 2020, wasn't as successful. But I do know for a fact that it's important to volunteers. I feel grateful that we were able to offer a little bit of in-person socialization during the pandemic. And I'm interested to hear from Michelle about how she dealt with that particular issue.
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we basically came to a screeching halt, with volunteers in March of 2020 and didn't really start back up again until September. But in that time period, we actually made a conscious decision to engage people with wellness checks. So in other words, we had staff that their whole, everything shifted, because we didn't have so many people coming into the facilities. And so we had actually wellness calls going out, not only to our volunteers, but also some of our senior members, who were isolated, frightened, there were other things. There's relationships between staff in our organization and some of the people that they see on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And so there was a real human connection that we were trying to continue to provide to people who were frightened and, maybe didn't have the ability to get food or, there was connections there. And as you well know, the YMCA partnered with the St. Pete Free Clinic to do food distribution, during COVID, utilizing our Child's Park facility. Mm-hmm. And that was another outreach that we did to some families that we served during our Neighbor to Neighbor Christmas program. I will say that, we had, similar to you, we had the opportunity to re-engage with volunteers with Neighbor to Neighbor in particular, because there are some functions of that program that allowed us to kind of change the way that we would typically do it and re-engage with some people. Now, some people chose not to. because there's contact with people that you're not around all the time. And so, you know, it was a personal choice, but we really did try hard to like make the situation palatable for people, where they felt that they could safely participate and engage in a familiar program, you know, where we bring joy and to so many families, you know, during the holiday season that really wouldn't have a holiday without our program. Over 400 families and 900 kids. So I think that we've tried very hard to be very thoughtful about engaging people, you know, during this time period, giving them opportunities to participate, and again, you know, meeting them where they are and trying to move forward with a productive plan, you know, for, you know, getting us back to where we were and even better, right? Maybe this has been a silver lining for us in that we've had the opportunity to communicate with people that normally would be out, not in our line of communication, right? So I've said that all along throughout the pandemic. You know, it's like fast forwarded us in relationship building like 10 years because we had to. And so I think that there is an opportunity that we need to take advantage of as organizations and continue the conversation, you know, with the community about opportunities and the value that we bring, you know, to our communities.
I completely agree with you, Michelle. I think that although COVID, of course, has significant challenges, it has been an amazing opportunity to try to reach out to communities that you otherwise would not have reached out to, right? So that's definitely a benefit. I want to talk, that dovetails into a couple of questions as we're wrapping up, which I think is a good one. Is there anything in the pandemic era changes that you've made that you don't see yourself ever going back to? Ever going back to? And I'll start with you, Xavier.
I'm not sure if there's anything that we won't go back to. I think there's a lot of things that we've adopted that helped us streamline some of our processes and helped us be more creative in our volunteer opportunities. So I think we'll take a lot of things away from the pandemic and the shifts that we made. But in terms of never going back to an opportunity, I'm not sure if there's anything that really stands out at this time.
Jennifer?
Well, operationally, you know, the free clinic began our drive-through fresh pantry model as a result of the pandemic, and we are not going to ever take that away. We have a client choice model as well, which is an indoor pantry shopping experience, but the drive-through fresh pantry will continue to be a thing. From what my leadership shares with me, that will always be the case, which means that volunteer opportunity will continue to be something that's available to folks in the future. But I also want to say that, you know, the creativity, the relationship building, all of those things that have changed in a good way, I think is going to continue to impact us positively for many years to come. Silver lining.
Michelle?
For sure. And I just piggyback on that by saying that, you know, we modified some things, you know, during this process, and we have found that some of those modifications were really good, and we're happy with it, you know, and other people are happy with it, and people that are engaged with us are happy with it. And so, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? That old saying. I think that, you know, we got shoved a little bit, you know, we get comfortable. Organizations get comfortable. Everybody gets comfortable doing things a certain way. And I think that the pandemic just made it okay for us to just really just stop and really take a hard look at the way we were doing things. And I'll give you some examples, like with the Neighbor to Neighbor program, which Kim is very familiar with because she was very instrumental in helping us get things going for that this year as a board member at the Y. But the Neighbor to Neighbor program, you know, traditionally has been, we collect toys from the community, we get corporate partners to help us do that. And that was really the engagement, you know, from that end, you know, and we just really had to think about that because a lot of corporations weren't going to the office anymore. So like putting a box in a business just wasn't going to work, right? But we still had to gather 3,000 toys somehow. And so we shifted our focus and we provided an online model where people could order toys through Amazon and Target and Walmart. They could go online, they could shop, they could volunteer, they could participate, they could donate, and they could do it very comfortably and very easily. And it was very successful. We're never going to go back to not doing that, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's going to be forever because it worked. And this year we didn't get as many online donated toys. We did go back to a modified version of how we do that. We collected a lot of toys in person because a lot of organizations have gone back to the office. And so it's even better. We collected more toys this year than we've ever collected. So, you know, I would say that exclusively going back to the way we did it, I don't see a reason for that.
Right.
You know, and until somebody comes to me and says that that was better, I don't see a reason to do that. You know,
Well, I have to squeeze in 2 questions before we close. The first is, and I'm going to ask you both at the same time, so you can do the first and the second, if that makes sense, of course. If your volunteer decided I needed a break, this is just not a safe space for me right now, do they have to go through the whole process again to get reacclimated with your organization? And the second one, which is appropriate because it's from my dean, and this is a college, is what attracted each of you to this career? Because it seemed like you all have similar motivations that also might attract volunteers. And after you answer that, we'll go to our closing. So Michelle, since you're up on my screen first, you answer first.
so as far as the re-qualifying question, I'm not sure. We may have a time period, you know, because we do background checks. So you may stay active for us for a certain period of time until that expires, right? And then, you know, that's really based on us doing the background check and going through that process. And so if like it's 6 months goes by, I would imagine that you're not going to have to requalify. But if 3 years goes by, that's a different story. And then as far as the career choice is concerned, Kim, you've known me for a very long time. You know, this was not my first choice for a career. My life has taken a lot of left turns, and I often found myself, I'm just going to tell you, my career started as a volunteer. I was volunteering, you know, for an organization and loved it, and was a volunteer fundraiser for that organization. And a colleague of mine at some point recognized that I might want to change my profession because he really felt I was in the wrong place. You know, like, you need to change what you're doing because you'd be better over here. And so I think that, you know, for me, it's service. It's about giving back. I truly love my job. I love what I do every day. I love the Y. You know, I feel that the Y is a wonderful organization that, you know, not every organization is perfect. No organization is perfect, but I feel that it's made up of a group of people that are very dedicated to changing lives, you know, every single day in what they do. And that's the focus. And it's an awesome, you know, place to be in life when you feel like you're very fulfilled every day with everything that, you know, how you engage with other people and the people that are volunteering for the organization, the people that you're working with, the people that you're serving.
Thank you so much. Jennifer?
Well, as far as people who are taking a break, it depends on the program they're in. There are different trainings and qualifications, but we will make it as easy as possible. And we did have a lot of folks who were interested in taking a pause during the pandemic. So yes, we welcome them all to come back. And then I accidentally came into this career. I was a humanities major at USF, and everyone said, you will never get a job if you're a humanities major. And I said, well, I'll never graduate unless I pick something I'm interested in. And then I got a job at American Stage Theater back in 1997. And that experience basically changed my life and my career. So I thank them still for that. And being able to get paid to make the world a better place is a real blessing. And I feel very lucky.
Thank you. Xavier?
Yeah, going off of the volunteers that are looking for a break, we're very flexible with our volunteers, and some of them do come and go, and we'll see them return again. So we're really flexible with them. And there's no timetable where we're looking to bring them in or bring them back. We would like to have them on a regular basis, but obviously that's not always an option. In terms of my career, I got into the volunteer space a few years ago out of college, and it's really just about helping others, and similar to what Michelle said, you know, the idea of service, and what better group of people than volunteers. You know, they're all working towards this mission to help people, and that Habitat, it's truly a hand up program and not a handout. So we do a lot to uplift the families, we educate them, we provide them with all the tools that they'll need to make that leap into homeownership. And as we know, the need for affordable homeownership is more crucial than ever with the way our current economy is and society is. So being here at this organization with like Jennifer and Michelle said, all passionate people, it's an incredible feeling, and I'm lucky to be here.
Mhm.
Well, and all of you all's, the heart you have and what you do comes out. And when people ask me, when we do programs like this, why is it important? It's important to connect the dots. It's important to know that as a part of civics and education and legislation and advocacy, that it's always at a grassroots level. When someone cares about an issue, they care enough about it to make change. They care enough about it to take their own specific time and space and resources and networking. And they are somehow connected in that puzzle that creates activism at the local level, at the county level, at the state level, and at the, of course, national level. And that all encompasses on some level civics. So thank you so much for what you do, for how you do contribute to our community, and how you care for our community when other entities, for profit and the government cannot. So thank you so much for what you do. With that, we're going to go to our last screens. We have, speaking of legislative advocacy, our next program is on February 16th. It's in partnership with the City of Seminole, the Florida League of Cities, and the Seminole Chamber of Commerce. And we're having a conversation about learning how to advocate and organize during the 2022 legislative session, because we want to make sure that we help enhance and educate and engage the community in why the process matter. That is at our digitorium. It's going to be in person, but we also will have a hybrid or virtual option. And the next slide, please. We're also going to do a statewide program on sea level rise in Florida. It's going to have, with the conversation will be held with Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez, Mitch Chester, and John Englander, and JP Brooker. These are all experts and scholars in the field who are going to sort of navigate the conversation from specifically what sea level rise is to some of the ethical and legal considerations, and most importantly, how communities are preparing for some challenges, especially in light of what happened in South Florida recently. Next slide. And most importantly, we're very grateful to have collaborated with the Florida Civic Advance for the FCA First Fridays program. The next seminar will be held in conjunction with the Florida League of Cities. It's on March 4th from 12 to 1, and it's on local government lessons, engaging with the concerned public. For more information on how to be a part of the Florida Civic Advance's programs, please go to their website at floridacivicadvance.net. And of course, our website is isps.spcollege.edu. We love collaborating with our partners. As I say in every program, we're grateful for Congressman Young for giving us the opportunity to carry on his legacy by having social, political, and economic discussions on in a nonpartisan manner, so that we can be solution-oriented in our approach and educate those who make decisions for us. Thank you so much for your time.